Welcome back to my channel. This is Ferocious Education. This is Ed. Today I'm going to be looking at CHF Solutions. The ticker goes by CHFS. This stock has had a bit of attention in the last 2 days, and you can see here through a month, 1 day chart, higher volumes on Thursday and Friday, which usually means a good sign. But we can see as well over the 3 months that it had spikes before, these ones here, and then a drop back in volume. So what you want to make sure is that doesn't happen and you end up getting stuck with a stock that is trading at around, well, still 4 million or 2 million, but a lot less can happen in lower volumes. So overall, even if this dips in terms of volume, the stock you would still be able to sell the stock at an alright price. Now, looking at different things here, the first thing that I want to look at is supports and resistance. Now, supports is what you have on the bottom of a stock dip when you have a U shape, and you can consider resistance to be what's on the top of an N, for instance, right? And it's basically what you would consider a milestone in a stock. So the current stock is sitting, I believe it has ran a little bit in the aftermarket, so it's currently sitting at almost 49. So let's look into the 3 months. So if it's sitting at a 49, we can see right now that there is definitely something happening here, resistance at around 51-ish. Now, what I like about this platform is that it already populates it in when I zoom in. So let's look into over here. I can already see, yeah, exactly. There's a resistance here at 51 that it also recognized. So that's the kind of next resistance. So first I'm going to be going through larger timelines, and then I'm going to go look closer to it just to show you a bit of my DD process. So the William percent R shows that this stock is more of sitting at a neutral level. It has previously been overbought, and as you can see, a lot of people have sold it in on the second day. And that transition usually is only an indicator to show you whether stock is oversold and overbought, and usually only works in short-term period. This stock was overbought before, over here, and then it dipped, and it was oversold, and it gained a bit of momentum and saw a bit of green. So usually this sometimes works, but you have to also align it with other ones. Average directional index, as I said before, between around 24 and 45 is the area that I want to be around with. Although this is around 20, right now sitting at 26.25, and has increased in the last hours of the stock market. This doesn't tell me much because it's still considered weak in my books. I would love to see it go a little bit higher in order to give a bit of a strength to the current movement. Now, looking at the MACD with histogram, we can see that it's picking up strength, but you have to look a little bit closer into what's happening within, let's say, a 1 hour interval to be able to understand it better. And we can see here that the 30 EMA and 10 SMA averages that I've previously discussed in the IDX DDD, they're actually touching. And that's where you have usually a high chance of reversal when they both touch. The stock is still considered cheaper than the 200 SMA. So let's look closer into a 1 month, 1 hour period. This gives us a bit of perspective into what we have for aftermarkets and extended markets. So it gets a little bit more beautiful in this way. Looking into this, you can see, if you remember, we talked about supports and resistance. We can see that here we have a bit of a support that is happening around roughly 44, 42, and it actually considers it as a pivot point. It's not even a support. Pivot point is a bit more interesting. It scans, it's not a strong support, neither a strong resistance, but it's points that are more likely to switch through. So there are also points that are very interesting to look at. Another thing that I want to point out quick is this is a perfect time to explain Fibonacci retracements and show them in action. So if you were to look around here, you get to see a bit of what's happening with Fibonacci retracement and why it's important. You can see that the Fibonacci retracement around 42, it hit 42 in the early market and then bounced back, right? And Fibonacci retracement, as I mentioned before, is points where they're likely to have a bit of a reversal. So this one is a beautiful example. You can see as well that it hit around 45 and then it jumped a bit back forth. And then around 57, well, that's around the 100% mark, so it just still went back, so that's fine. That doesn't tell us anything. But you can see that it's sitting right now around 0.48. And that would for me would be considered a little bit more of a support-ish, a good sign. But the next resistance is 51, and the retracement tells us around 0.52. So between 51 and 52, that is a very dangerous territory for me. Now, enough with Fibonacci retracement. So I'm just going to delete that to get it out of the way. We're going to be looking into the average directional index as the day goes. So if you remember here, I told you above 50 is considered dangerous, and you can see that above 50, it changed. And we see that a bit often as well. If you look back here, above 50, it changed. So that's a very interesting direction index that I usually follow. When we're looking into the William %R, you can see that a lot happens through the hour, so I don't really trust this except on a day interval. Looking into the MACD, you can notice the times where they touch is the times where you either have a breakout or a reversal in direction. Over here, it went from red to green, so that's a good sign, but I still want to see what happens in the early market. As you can see, the MACD went around the negative side, which is usually a bad sign. It's a bearish sign. But we're able to see a bit closer what the direction of the stock is going to be in the early market, and are able to decide whether it's going to see more of a green day or a red day. Now, in the last trading day, it dipped a little and then went up to around 25%. And you can see that happening here. Now, we're dealing with a little bit small prices, so 25% is a difference between 44 and 50 and 60. That's a big difference. And then a dip back. So overall, I believe it had a red day on Friday, but extended market has ran up to, I think, 8%. Yeah, 8%. So it's an interesting stock to look at. Let's look at it a little bit closer in terms of the 1 hour interval. You can see that the directional index is still a little bit strong into 37. Doesn't give you much because it's going downwards, so I trust the directional index when it's going upwards. And as you can see, it's gaining strength and it's going green. On the last day, it's been a little bit sloppy for me. The red is above the blue, which is not a good sign, but it's a sign where you have to look at it closely since the gap between them is very little, and a reversal is highly likely. Now, looking into volumes look alright to me. The next step to look at this is patterns. I haven't discussed patterns before, so this would be an amazing time to look at it. This resembles one of two patterns for me. I'll go through patterns in another video, but the two main patterns that I can see in this stock is either a bullish flag, which goes higher and then kind of starts going red and then green and then red again. So you might want to catch the green and sell it on there. Or it can be an ascending triangle. An ascending triangle is basically almost the same. It has green going up, and it has red and green, and it oscillates in more of a triangular shape, where it goes closer to more of a bottleneck shape, and then it hits up and runs. Now, if you remember, I told you the 10 SMA and 30 EMA were touching on the 1 day interval. When you go to the 1 hour interval, you can see that the gap has increased and the 10 SMA is running higher than the 30 EMA, which is a good sign. These are different averages and it tells you that it's more of in a bullish run right now. So that's good. On top of that, so that's basically a little bit of technical analysis that I've gone through. One of the most important things with the stocks is news. So what is the current news? All right. So we have a hearing. Maxim initiates coverage on CHF Solution with buy 150 price target. The market has already reacted on that already, in my opinion. Now, what's the upcoming news? A lot of people see something like 4 June or don't go back, usually back more than a day or two. But in my opinion, it's very important. Why? You scroll down, you're going to be reading that they have a vote for a reverse split. My platform sometimes is a bit weird and it shows it in white highlights. So there is a reverse stock split happening, and the vote is going to be by June 18th. So a reverse split, or a split, in my opinion, doesn't really affect the value of a stock, but the stock market usually plays around news and reacts to news differently. So my advice is I would jump off that ship before the 17th of June, just in case the stock market reacts in a different way. So these were the facts. These are the technical analysis. From my opinion, I would love to see what happens in the early market. If it runs green in the early market, I would expect it that it might continue to run green, but I would have to redo my DD on it and check. So what am I checking in the early market? I want to see the MACD turn back positive. If it does, that could be a good indicator. Another indicator here that you have to be very careful with using the MACD. If it's in the positive region, it does not mean that it's gonna be green, right? So you can see here there's reversals. Sometimes you have to look into it more into a very closer interval. So what's happening here in terms of a 5-minute interval? You can see this was the red period, and it was on the bottom. The run that it had in the green, MACD was on positive. So you have to really zoom into intervals in order to look at this. Again, extended market can be easily manipulated with different smaller volumes, and you can see here, very, very small volumes compared to what it has unusual. So it's very interesting to see early on.